Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us again at the Center for Postgraduate Studies in Rhodes University. For those who don't know me as yet, my name is Asi Pemkalisa, and I am a lecturer at the Center for Postgraduate Research Studies, CPGS, today we are joined by two guests or facilitators who will be discussing how to manage our well-being or how to manage our mental health. So the first one in introduction is Kitsui Mangosi, who has completed her Bachelor of Arts degree as well as her honors degree in psychology at the University of Pretoria, UP. She is also currently enrolled for a Master's of Arts degree in counseling psychology at the University of Pretoria and working as an intern counseling psychologist at Rhodes University Counseling Center. So her professional interests include trauma, socialization, and identity formation. The second speaker or facilitator or guest that we have is Marina Slabet, who is currently an intern psychologist at Rhodes University. Her preferred psychological and therapeutic modalities include cognitive behavioral therapy, psychodynamic therapy, and prolonged exposure therapy for trauma survivors. From 2018 to 2020, she practiced as a psychometrist in an independent practice within the educational sector, serving individual clients and Eastern Cape schools. So thank you so much for gracing us, Kitsui. And also thank you so much to Marina for gracing us today. So over to you, please.
Thank you so much. Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you so much for that lovely introduction, and thank you to everyone joining this afternoon. It's always lovely to see the numbers and still increasing as we go. So today, this talk about mental health and wellness will be presented by my colleague Kitsui and I here from Student Counseling. So before we get going, I would just like to open the floor and the chat function. So if you are comfortable, put on your camera or put on your microphone and just share some expectations of today's workshop with us. If you're not comfortable doing so, please use the chat function and just tell us what are your expectations for today's workshop? What are you hoping to get from this? Or any questions that you have in mind. So I'm going to give about 2 minutes just to open the floor and then we will attend to those. There's no right or wrong answer here. We really just want to get a sense of your expectations and you have about today's workshop. Okay, I don't see any hands and I don't see anything on the chat function. So I'm going to go on for the sake of time, but we will keep on monitoring the chat function. If anything comes up, please feel free to use it.
Irene, I think we are having a bit of, can you see the chat box from here, the full screen?
Yes.
All right, we have about 2.
Okay, it came through now. Thank you, Kate. So the first one is from CPGS. Learn about how to create a healthy balance between my PhD, work, and motherhood. Wow, that's a full plate. So that's an expectation regarding time management and finding a healthy balance with all of these demands that life has to offer. So thank you for that. Asipa, I think that was you. And then Joy is saying how to manage your health during and after a postgraduate journey. Thank you so much for sharing that. And those are definitely topics that we'll be touching on.
Hi, Kitsui, is it me or did Marina just cut?
Okay, yeah, I thought it was also on my side, but I think she just Kat, maybe we can give her a minute.
Okay. Okay, now she's back.
Babe, your mic is on mute.
Thank you. I said, I just apologize. I think the connection has been giving me problems the whole day. So let's just try again. Okay. Kids, where did I cut off? Did you guys hear me going through both expectations?
Yes, so you went through the
Okay.
first one and then you were doing Joy's expectation.
Okay. And then there's another one from Kotso saying, my expectation is to get a better understanding of how to manage my mental health and stay positive about postgraduate studies. So thank you. Those are very good expectations, and hopefully with the information that we'll be providing, you'll get some clarity and some tips on how to navigate through this, because I know, being a postgraduate student myself, it's very tough and very demanding. And I always say, like, life doesn't slow down just because we are doing this. Daniel, tips on how to deal with anxiety. And then there's another one saying, with all the depression epidemic going on, especially in South Africa, how to remain on my sanity gap. Yeah, we will be going through depression, some protective factors, some things to look out for. So thank you for that expectation. And then, so Asipe, I think maybe if you can just have a look on the chat function, there is a question regarding the recording of this session. There's a student who's saying that she is in class, but that she would like to watch it afterwards. So will the recording be available?
Hi everyone, yes. So what we usually do is that the following day after a workshop, I send an email to everyone who has registered for Zoom regarding the Zoom recording, and also a link to our YouTube page where these recordings are also uploaded.
Wonderful. Okay, Zuzeka, I know you are in class, but I hope that you could hear that feedback. So the slides will be, or the recording will be available. Okay. Thank you everyone for your valuable input and setting those expectations. And we really hope that we do, meet your expectations and perhaps even give you more than you were hoping for. Okay. So just an overview of today's presentation or workshop. We will be looking at what is mental health, and then almost on the opposite side of the spectrum, what is a mental disorder. We will be going through some common mental health disorders. I think it's very important just to have a basic understanding of that. I always say knowledge is power. So the more knowledge you have about these things, you can use it to your power to be able to differentiate between, okay, maybe I'm just having a bad day, maybe tomorrow things will get better. These are the things that I could do. And then also what warning signs to look out for. Because sometimes you are really not okay, and only with information and more knowledge, you're able to, realize that. Then we'll just be looking at some stats, stigma, and then we'll be sharing some very valuable resources with you that are available on campus in Makanda, and some telephonic resources as well. So as I said, it's very important to start from the beginning and really just have a look at what mental health is. So I think a good place to start is by defining mental health. So mental health includes our emotional, psychological, and social well-being, and the interaction between those three. It affects how we think, how we feel, and how we act. And it also helps determine how we handle stress, how we relate to others, and how we make life choices. So let's take this into a practical example. If you are not doing well, if your mental health is not where it's supposed to be, you are feeling absolutely sad all the time, you are tired, and you are just withdrawing yourself, not spending a lot of time with friends, we can clearly see how your emotional, psychological, or physiological and social well-being has been impacted. So that last sentence, it determines how we handle stress. To think about this, if you're in a good space, emotionally, psychologically, physiologically, socially, you're doing well, we are able to handle stress much more, better, in a better way, because I always say that your cup is filled, so you have more to spill over. But when your cup is empty, when you're running on empty, we don't really handle stress that well. We don't relate to others quite well. We tend to isolate ourselves or feel lonely or feel like no one cares. We tend to be more emotional. And it also impacts on our life choices. If we are not in a very
Hi, Marina. I think you cut again.
I think Marina just got.
I do apologize. Let's
Okay.
try again. Kids, if it happens again, maybe you should share. I have no
Yeah.
idea why it's cutting me off.
Hi,
Okay.
Marina. I think the other way that works best when it comes to connection is if you switch off your camera.
Okay, let's try
So
that.
it will assist a bit. Thank
Okay,
you.
thank you so much. Okay. So then, as I said in the beginning, it's very important not just to know what a mental or what mental health is and what good mental health comprises of, but also to be aware of what is a mental disorder. Now, it's very important to note and to be aware of the fact and not to pathologize normal reactions, but all of us do experience some
Hi, Marina. I think perhaps if you can share from your side, Kitsui,
Okay.
and for Marina to come in and just speak using a mic.
Okay. Give us a minute.
Please let me know if you're having difficulties so that I can make you co-host, or you can email the slides and I'll share on your behalf. Okay, perfect.
Okay, so I am in Kitsui's office and she doesn't seem to have any difficulty. So let's try this again. Thank you for bearing with me. As you can see, the Wi-Fi has not been on our side today. But as I was saying, all of us do experience some form of mental health problems now and again when we are feeling stressed, worried, anxious, and so forth. So I see a lot of clients at the moment. I am speaking to a lot of friends and even colleagues at the moment, and that end of term stress and fatigue and burnout is a real thing. So I just want to take a moment to acknowledge the fact that this year and this term has been very hard. It's been a term of adjustment. We are transitioning back to face-to-face learning. A lot of you are postgraduate students that have moved from other places. So it's a lot to take in. And I want to normalize these reactions and say that it's okay not to feel okay. It's okay to be feeling stressed, worried, anxious, and so forth. However, sometimes it does reach a point where we struggle to manage the stress and anxiety and worrying, and it becomes severe to a point where it impacts on our functioning. Now, this could be academic functioning, social functioning, emotional functioning. You might feel yourself not being as emotionally regulated as you once were. So those are all things to look out for. And then when we come to defining a mental disorder or mental illness or even a psychiatric disorder, we define it as a behavioral or mental pattern that causes significant distress or impairment in personal functioning. So it's usually defined by a combination of how someone behaves, feels, perceives, or thinks. And we'll be going into a little bit more detail in some common or prevalent mental health disorders, just to make sure you guys have a good understanding of these and what to look out for. Okay, so the first mental health disorder that I would like to speak about today is trauma. And according to the American Psychological Association, the APA, trauma can be seen as an emotional response to a traumatic event. So if you are someone that has been through a traumatic event, some common reactions to trauma might include shock, denial, avoidance, and negative alterations in cognition and mood. We often see when there was trauma and the person develops a disorder afterwards, there are often comorbidities of depression and anxiety disorder. So a clear indication that there has been trauma is this negative alteration in your mood. You might be feeling more sad than you usually were, just a general low mood and tearfulness and just not being yourself. And then long-term reactions to trauma include unpredictable emotions, again, that emotional dysregulation, flashbacks, strained relationships, and even physical symptoms like headaches and nausea. So it's very important not only to be aware of the mental or the psychological impact of trauma and what it might have, but also of the physical symptoms. So just some interesting statistics that I thought we'd share with you. According to a 2002 study by Hoffman, 70.6% of university students reported exposure to several traumatic events. And then research conducted in 2013 at a large residential university in South Africa indicated that 90% of the sample reported at least one traumatic event in their lifetime. So if we consider this high prevalence of trauma exposure, especially among university students, of which we are part of, we know that South Africans and South African students in particular are at risk of developing post-traumatic stress disorder or PTSD. Then anxiety. This is something that it really presents in large numbers at student counseling, at the psychology clinic. And anxiety disorders are a group of conditions in which anxiety prevents us from living our lives in the way that we would like to. So again, that impairment from living life as per usual or living your best life, if we could put it like that. So it's important to remember that we all do experience some form of stress or anxiety every now and again, but that doesn't mean that you necessarily have an anxiety disorder, okay? So these are some of the anxiety disorders that you can look out for, that you can be aware of. So firstly, generalized anxiety disorder is a constant severe anxiety that interferes with day-to-day activities. So it's almost not specifically related to an event. So I almost want to say, if you are very anxious before writing a test, or you are very anxious when delivering a presentation, that's quite normal. But if there's this constant severe anxiety that's really deliberating and interferes with your optimal functioning, and you're almost so worried even about the fact that you're always worried, that might be an indication of generalized anxiety disorder. OCD, or obsessive compulsive disorder, is also another anxiety disorder, and it can be identified or described by having intrusive thoughts, fears, and obsessions that lead you to repetitive behaviors or compulsions. So I think movies and all of these mainstream ways that OCD is portrayed usually portrays it as like switching off the light 5 times before leaving your room, or checking 3 times whether you put the straightener off. Now those could be, but obsessive compulsive disorder is also those things that we don't see. So just keep an eye out if you feel this intense need to, or this obsession to do something, otherwise something bad is going to happen, these intrusive thoughts, that could be an indication of OCD. Panic disorder is basically when you have constant or frequent panic attacks. And it's also important to know that, yes, we all do get overwhelmed by anxiety sometimes, but that doesn't necessarily mean that it's a panic attack. So a panic attack has psychological and physiological symptoms, and when it's serious, and there are plenty of them, then we start to consider panic disorder. So if this is something that you struggle with, just flag it, and then at the end, you can bring it up, or we will be sharing some valuable resources. And then PTSD, as I've touched on, is a condition that's triggered by experiencing or witnessing a terrifying event. So based on the diagnostic criteria, it needs to be almost life-threatening, or when there was serious injury involved. So if this is something that pertains to you or that resonates with you, something that you've been through, and you are experiencing some of the symptoms that I discussed earlier, that is also something to be on the lookout for. And then social anxiety, the last anxiety disorder that we'll be covering, is when everyday interactions cause irrational anxiety, fear, self-consciousness, and embarrassment. So again, this should not be mistaken for being a little bit anxious or a little bit apprehensive of, let's say, going to a party when you might be meeting new people, or any social gathering for that matter. I think most of us get a little bit anxious in situations like those, but when the anxiety is so severe that it almost prevents you from going to things like that, and when you are constantly scared or anxious about scrutiny from others, that's an indication of social anxiety disorder. Okay, so signs to look out for in people that may have anxiety disorders. So we pose this questions almost, so imagine it as if I'm asking you, and if you say yes to many of these or no to many of these, that might be an indication of where you are. So are you experiencing anxious or worrisome thoughts on a daily basis? Are you plagued by fears others perceive as unfounded or irrational? If this is the case, then you might have, confided in a friend or family member, and they almost say, no, I don't experience it the same, or wow, no, that sounded a bit irrational or dramatic or extra. Do you avoid everyday social activities because they cause you anxiety? Do you experience sudden heart-pounding panic attacks? And then the last one, is your anxiety interfering with your schoolwork, social life, and family? So I'm just going to leave those up there while Kitsui takes over, and she will be guiding you through the rest of the presentation.
Okay. Hi, everyone. Thank you to Marina for starting us off with the presentation. So we will be starting off with, see if I can change this. Okay, perfect. Let me just switch off my camera. Okay. So I think it's important that we begin by defining suicide, which is can be defined as an act of someone taking their own life, and it's usually an intentional act. And some of the common experiences of individuals who experience suicidal thoughts could include negative changes in their mood, having a sense of hopelessness, having talks of suicide about ending their life, intrusive thoughts about deaths, a decline in their academic performance, avoiding friends and social activities. Also important, a sudden calmness after long periods of depression, and talking about feeling trapped and wanting relief from the pain. So as you can see, these experiences reflect an impact on important areas of functioning within the individual's life, and most importantly, the sense of helplessness and them wanting, a relief from pain. Okay. Potential risk factors for suicide. These are just some of the ones that we have come across in terms of working in student environments, but they're not limited to this list. We begin by defining risk factors as characteristics that are associated with a higher likelihood of a negative outcome. And some of these are depression, alcohol abuse, which is something that's very prevalent in, Rhodes University, developing a new support system, new environment, financial difficulties, and academic difficulties. And we think that it's important to highlight these risk factors because we always say, as much as we come into the university space as students, there are many other external factors that impact on our functioning and how we get to perform and develop as I almost said psychologists, as students. Potential protective factors are ones which lower the likelihood in negative outcome. And some of which we've identified could be your friends, like Marina said, that you may be confiding in, could be your family, your lecturers, the counseling center, the psychology clinic, the career center, and many more other structures that are available. The sports that you could take part in, I think also sports that you could watch in terms of rugby games, soccer, hockey, and so forth. Community engagement, you could also take part in race activities. I'm not sure of the activities in terms of the Opidan office. Also, in terms of financial worries and stress, there is the financial aid office and the bursars office that has been made available. Depression is a very common and a serious medical illness or mental illness that we often hear about, and it affects how you feel, think, and how you act. And most of the time, it's characterized by, loneliness, sadness, and a loss of interest in activities that one used to enjoy. It leads to a variety of emotional and physical symptoms, and it can decrease a person's ability to function at work and at home. And the last bullet is a very important statement because I think most of the time we focus on the psychological impact of this symptom, anxiety or depression, but we don't focus or put priority on the possible physical symptoms that can arise because of depression, some of them being headaches, having a stomach ache, heavy shoulders, a change in terms of your period cycle and so forth. So those are just some of the things to look out for, that yes, psychologically you might be impacted, but your body is also actively responding to the psychological impact. Common indicators of depression is extreme sadness or hopelessness, heavy drinking or drug use, so substance use, and using it as an avoidance mechanism or to relieve feelings of hopelessness, loss of interest in activities that you have once enjoyed, no longer attending classes or social outings, so it tends to isolate someone a lot, negative reactions or with apathy to most things, thoughts, talks of death or suicide as a possible option for you. So as the wellness division and in the counseling center, we work primarily from a holistic perspective or holistic wellness. And usually we will ask the question, are you well? And asking it in terms of holistically, how are you doing within the different 5 domains? And you say, am I mentally healthy? And we use what we call the SMS model, which is then categorized into your social, your mental, spiritual, physical, and your emotional wellness. Your social wellness, that includes your relationships with other individuals, but also provides a sense of connectedness and belonging. Your mental involves your thoughts and your feelings, as well as how do you cope when there's ups and downs that are present in the everyday life. Spiritual wellness provides us with a sense of meaning as well as a sense of purpose, and this could look different for everyone. Our physical well-being includes, our nutrition, our sleep, our hygiene. This could now include our exercising. What are we doing to be physically active? And our emotional well-being is our ability to produce positive emotions, moods, thoughts, and feelings. And I know that also it could be an awareness and having an understanding of your emotions. And I think it's very important that while asking yourself, are you well within this model, it's important to be aware of certain stresses or sources of stress or depression or anxiety that could be coming from the different domains, so that you know that this is where the source of stress is coming from in this domain. And it's very important that you're able to maintain some sort of balance in terms of all these different domains, because all of them work together, you know, in an interconnected space. They're all interdependent on each other. And before we carry on, you know, we'd love to know that if you were to rate your well-being on a scale of 1 to 5 on the different domains, where are you in the different domains? So on a scale of 1 to 5, how would you rate your social well-being, your mental well-being, spiritual, your physical? I think there's an error there, as well as your emotional. And you can just write that in the chat box. Okay, all 5. Okay, so Tamsanga says all of them out of 5 is a 5, which is a very good rating scale. Thank you, Tamsanga. I think we'll give it a minute. Okay. Nontutuzelo says 3. Okay, so we kind of in the middle there between 1 maybe being poor and 5 being good or excellent. Okay, if there are any more, then I think I'll just come back to them. SMS model is very important, and I think it touches back to some of the expectations that were referred to, or that was communicated in the beginning of the presentation, in terms of someone asked, you know, how do I create a healthy balance between work, being a mom, and, you know, all those different dynamics, and also how do I manage anxiety, for example. I think those are some of the expectations that popped up. And usually when we're working from this perspective, then it's okay, you know, my anxiety could be, you know, rising a bit. I'm feeling very anxious lately. What can I do in terms of maybe my social well-being? Are there individuals that I can reach out to and communicate? Is there a sport that I can take part in that I feel as though this will give me a bit of rest? You know, spiritually, is there anything that I can engage in that would help me manage my anxiety? And I think a very important aspect to note is that anxiety cannot be alleviated, it can be managed. And I think it's the same thing as stress, to say that we do need a little bit of stress and a little bit of anxiety for us to, you know, have that little bit of kick. Because if you're feeling a bit anxious, then it means you kind of have a sense of motivation to study or to work, and afterwards you'll feel those levels of anxiety slowly just reducing down. So before we continue, Constanza says social 3, mental 4, spiritual 4, physical 3, and emotional 3. Right. Marina says mine fluctuates between 2 and 5. Thank you for that. And as you can see below there, we say, you know, it's important to rate your well-being regularly on a scale of 1 to 5. So it's kind of like a regular check-in to say, how am I doing mentally? You know, am I mentally well? So that you can know, okay, oops, I think I'm decreasing a bit in my spiritual wellness. How can I up that a bit, so that you constantly have that balance in place? Okay, burnout, a very, very common, you know, term that we come across a lot as students, as postgraduate students as well, because of the workload that we come across, and things just working at a very quicker pace. So burnout is, you know, your emotional, mental, and a physical exhaustion that is caused by prolonged stress and commonly known as going through the most. And I think you'll hear the individual says, I'm just surviving, for example. And some practical tips for burnout is monitor your own mental health and implement some healthy boundaries. Time management is also a very important aspect for this. I always say it's important for you to be able to pace yourself. Yes, things are happening at a very quick pace, or yes, you're used to being able to cover study content in 3 hours and all of that. But once you start experiencing exhaustion, it means that you can't do things at the same pace that you were able to. So be mindful of that, and take things in smaller segments and make sure that you're pacing yourself correctly. Self-awareness, know what you can handle and when you're not in a good space. Speak to someone, and here we say, it could be a friend, it could be a lecturer, or it could be coming to the counseling center, the psychology clinic. We also usually have something called Smash Tuesdays, which are for students, where we cover, different topics that are in relation to the certain time of the term or semester to help students in dealing with stress and anxiety and all different topics. And it's usually a Tuesday at 7 o'clock, and I think we'll be resuming with them from next term. So just to go through some statistics, research indicates that only 18.1% of university students sought mental health care, and that only 28.9% of students with mental disorders received treatment. Without early intervention and effective treatment, mental health issues may lead to a range of adverse outcomes, such as role impairment, academic difficulties, and suicidal behavior. And I think that this statistic speaks to why, we have the counseling center in place, and we are working towards a preventative model to avoid not getting to those adverse outcomes. And this also speaks to why do we still have so many students that are not coming through and seeking mental health. And also speaking to the scarceness of mental health in South Africa. We still know that it's a very scarce resource, and I believe that as the university and the counseling center, we do beyond our means, or we go beyond our means to make sure that we're able to make it as accessible as possible through having these workshops, through having on-call sessions, and also our therapy sessions. And just to speak, in relation to why some students maybe don't seek mental health services, and it could be related to stigma, For example, here what we have, it says, I want to talk about my mental health, but I'm scared that I might be judged. And another person is saying, the people around me won't be supportive or understanding. It could hurt my career. I don't want people to pity me, and I'm scared that it might define me. And, how many of us have felt or thought like this every once in a while before we had, a full understanding of what happens when we seek mental health and what exactly is mental health? And I think most of the stigmatization may come from a point of not many individuals still having an understanding of mental health, but also all these different rumors that are there in terms of, okay, once you go there, then this happens and so forth, and how this could impact on your career. And I think more than anything, speaking about your mental health is also something that's very important, because it means we're taking an active stance towards closing the stigma. And individuals as well that are coming to therapy are able to create a narrative when they walk outside of our doors, and to be able to correct the stigmas that are out here, to say, actually, this is what the experience is like, and this is what you gain from going to therapy. Okay. Just to share with you some resources. So the counseling center is open Monday to Friday from 8 to 4:30. And we are at the top floor of Steve Biko building in Prince Alfred Street. We do have on-call sessions as well, Monday to Friday, and these are our crisis on-call sessions, or if you're feeling overwhelmed. We do not have a crisis line anymore, but we do have ER24 and Higher Health that you can contact after hours, and they offer 24-hour services. If you can take a picture of this slide. We also have the psychology clinic on campus, the healthcare center, the harassment center, and all these different structures, the career center, we work together within the wellness division to make sure that the students are mentally well. And I think we can go to the last slide. And this is the end of our presentation, and we'd just like to open the floor to any questions, reflections, and comments.
Okay, so I think while we're waiting for some responses, I do want to mention the fact that part of the stigmatization, and with what we said now about the limited resources, I want to encourage anyone here today, if therapy is something that you've always thought about, it's something that you haven't engaged in, that you are curious about, there doesn't necessarily have to be something wrong with you, if I can put it like that, to come for therapy. We are all in therapy as intern psychologists. I think most of our colleagues are, and it's really a place where you can bounce ideas off someone, where you can, have your feelings validated and normalized, and just a space where you feel safe and contained, because life gets hectic, so I don't want anyone here today to think that, I need to be in a bad space before, seeking therapy. So our doors are open. If that's something you would like to do, just pop in, or maybe kids, if you can go back to the previous slides, just contact our secretary, Glenda, about an appointment, or just look us up on the Rhodes University website. So our door is always open. No problem is too big or too small. Any questions, any reflections of today's session?
Hi, colleagues, can I come in?
Yes.
Okay, thank you very much. I just love using the word colleagues. It's much more simple. Okay, so from my side now, I'm just wearing a hat of a student at this point, half student, half staff member. I've really found it difficult, because staff members can also be contract people and not really permanent in terms of affording all the outside, therapy sessions and stuff. But I'm just like, how do we then, I don't know if the space.
So then I think we can wrap things up.
Sorry, Marina. Sorry about that.
No problem. So in terms of access, because I think last year when I was trying so much to email the counseling center, but the response was not as fast as, someone who wants to talk to someone should be, to a point where when the response came by, I felt like, okay, I don't need it anymore at that point. And this is not only my reflection, one of the students I had a conversation with was saying that as much as it is difficult, for particularly Black men to actually accept that they need therapy, they need to speak to someone. So you email the counseling center and they get back to you after you've already, spoken to someone about it and you think the situation is fixed. But also, I think when you speak about mental health, we mostly think that you need to speak to a psychologist when you are in the basement of rock bottom, and not when everything is working well. And I kind of feel like, mental health or well-being is an ongoing process that you need to work on, whether you are doing well or not. So in most cases, you see people attending therapy when they are in their lows, and when everything is working well, they don't see a need to. So I'm not sure if it's an awareness issue, that because we think therapy is only for depressed people who are facing anxiety and trauma, rather than, speaking about mental health, sort of like as a physical wellness. This is why we go to the gym every day in any case. Yeah. Thanks.
Thank you, fellow colleague. You're making very important points there. I'd like to start with the first one. The slowness of the response, I think, may be in relation to, we do receive quite a lot of emails, and I think also the waiting list might be a factor, in that there's only so much of us and so many of students that we need to attend to. But I think still do reach out. I usually say as well, make a follow-up if you can. Also, our on-call services, if you can't maybe get hold of us in the process of the email, and it is quite urgent, make use of the telephone number that has been provided in terms of the counseling center, because it is urgent and we do want to be attending to the students. Secondly, thank you for the point that you're making in terms of, yes, we usually have individuals coming to therapy when they kind of at the end of the spectrum. And I think that's why I think from my side, it might be a lack of understanding in terms of why is therapy there, and having the narrative outside that it's for when you can't anymore, when you're at the end of the spectrum and all of that. But we do have some clients coming through, just for psychoeducation, or you have clients coming through to say, I want to prepare for when anxiety is there. It's not necessarily there now, but when it's there in the future, then at least I know how do I manage it. So like Marina said, I think it's an invitation to say, please come to the counseling center. Don't wait until, it's at the end of the spectrum where you're feeling as too overwhelmed and so forth, so that it doesn't end up affecting your different areas of functioning. So please come as early as you can, attend our workshops that we have, make use of the resources that we make available as well to you.
Okay, so two people have raised the issue of non-responsiveness, or having to wait quite a while before being attended to. I know this is an issue. We constantly talk about it in our clinic meetings or our center meetings, and yeah, I don't want to make excuses, but we are under-resourced and we are really trying to make a point of that. But as Kitsui said, I really want to stress the fact that there is always someone on call at the Student Counseling Center. So if you are listening today and you know about friends who have been put off, or have been waiting long, or if that's the case with you, next time come in and almost say, I need an on-call session, I am distressed, I'm not okay, I need to see someone, and you will be helped because there's always someone on call here. And then I do know on the form there is also space where you can tick one of two options. So one being it's not that severe and I can wait a while to see someone, and there's one, I am facing a crisis, I think, and I need to see someone as soon as possible. And we do prioritize the cases that say I need to see someone immediately. So again, it's that thing of not thinking that something is too small or insignificant. Okay, Alida, thank you. I think you speak here to the stigma related to mental illness or mental health in general. Alida shared with us that she's been in therapy since she can remember. And I wish that was the case, and that we had enough staff and enough resources, to offer long-term and continuous therapy for all our students. But even if you are, like you say, able to go once or twice a month for mental health checkup and viewed in the same way as we view like a physiological checkup. So that is absolutely advocating for mental health and fighting against the stigma. So thank you for that. Mabato, thank you so much for your feedback. We really appreciate it and we acknowledge it. Okay, there is another one. We are living in a very confused era. Who am I? What is my purpose in life? And where people worry a lot what others say about them. How can one, as a teacher, for example, encourage others to be at their best sanity gap? Wow. You are highlighting a lot here. You are really highlighting a lot here. And I would say, and Kitsui, welcome to chip in here, but I think one of the best ways would be to advocate for mental health in the spaces or the platforms that allows you to do so, and also to set an example. if it comes under your attention that, you know, X or Y, this problem is very prevalent and it's something that comes up a lot, maybe have a small group discussion about that, or bring it to your own life and serve as an example. You can also bring in the SMS model if that's something you can remember, and use that as a practical tool to allow others to address the sanity gap by almost checking in with themselves and making sure that they are well in all those domains or aspects that we spoke about. Okay, let's give another minute maybe for a comment or a reflection.
Hi, colleagues, me again. You know, I'm just thinking that, you know, perhaps in terms of some spaces for those people who don't have, you know, people to talk to, you know, people to share with, we can also create a collaborative space with the center and with postgraduate students, where we do activities or offer space where people can share, you know, in terms of their research journey and any other conversation that can transpire. Because truth be told, for example, I'm from PE Nelson Mandela University. I've seen people drinking, you know, but Rhodes University students take the cup from my observations.
Yeah.
And this is worrisome, because that's exactly what I think people do in Grahamstown because of the time in the spaces. So I think it would also serve, you know, a healthy environment where we create other spaces, you know, where postgraduate students meet up, whether to share their research, whether to sit, whether to picnic, whether to hike, as long as it is a space where they can, you know, leave feeling much more better than before, of course, in collaboration with attending therapy.
That is a wonderful idea, and I've actually got a lot to say there, but I'm going to keep it short. So in terms of, you know, the small groups, I really want to encourage everyone here today, you know, whether you know other people who are attending, or whether you are aware of the other people in your faculty or department who are, you know, busy with postgraduate degrees, to really reach out and to suggest WhatsApp groups. Like you said, just checking in with each other. I recently myself joined a group where, you know, each night at a certain time we check up on each other, we have a research hour, and it's really about holding each other accountable, sharing, you know, when you are feeling demotivated. It's a platform where you can share if you are feeling distressed, just, you know, having a supportive system going. And then in terms of the small group or the group workshop, that is actually something that we've been talking about here at student counseling, almost having like group sessions once a week. So yeah, I would really encourage you maybe to contact one of Kits and I just as a follow-up, and we can definitely take that up with Christine, our manager here at student counseling. But I really want to encourage everyone here today, you know, take a step and reach out to others, and you be the advocate, you know, for mental health and for supportive small groups. I know what a difference it's made for myself. So maybe to spill that over into the larger postgraduate community. And then thank you, Constanze and Palesa, for your lovely feedback. We really appreciate it.
Well, thank you so much, colleagues. I see there are no more hands or comments, but only, you know, comments of gratitude in terms of this presentation. A well-needed, you know, informative session for us to understand the importance of our mental well-being. Also, thank you so much to the facilitators. You know, you mentioned something quite at the end, Marina, when you were mentioning the importance of community. And I think the community that you're building starts with these workshops. Feel free to email the people that you see here to create your own safe space, a space that you'll be able to share about research, a space that you'll be able to talk to people that will understand what you are going through. I mean, we also understand that perhaps we should have another session second semester, because, you know, other postgraduate students because of COVID and all that, this is their very first time being on campus, if they are on campus, and others come from different other universities with so many socio-economic issues that are already existing in Grahamstown, Makanda, the town itself. I mean, water shortages, and some people are experiencing all those things for the very, very first time here, which adds into the plate that they already have. So this indeed was a very informative session. So thank you so much to the both of you for gracing us with your presence, and also, for sharing the information that you did today. To everyone who's present here today, including the facilitators, I will send out the recording tomorrow. And unfortunately, or fortunately, we won't have workshops for the next, I think, 2 to 3 weeks, because of grade and also because of the break that students will be going to next week. So our next session will be on the 28th of April. Of course, our short courses are continuing. However, all the other advertised short courses have closed for registration. Please keep your eye out on any communication that will be coming up, which we will send on the CPGS mailing list. If you are not on the mailing list, make sure that you send an email to cpgs@ru.ac.za to be added on the mailing list. From my side, Diane Bulela, thank you so much for being here. Have a lovely Wednesday evening. Thank you.